Are you a little afraid to dig into your 300ZX and do some valve cover gaskets because it's just so much and you don't even know where to start? Well, look no further. Today, we're going to show you guys how to do it on this VG right here. So basically this is the NA edition. For the turbo guys, sorry, the EGR arms get like right in the way and it's so hard to get access and clearance. I mean, you can bend them out of the way, you just got to bend them back, and it makes putting the plenum on a nightmare. And basically, if yours is in the car, we're going to show you guys what to do, how to get it out. And first, you'll start with your intakes, both your hose clamps, and then you'll have a PCV over here on the passenger side. The driver's side also has a PCV, and then you'll have an idle air control hose, and I believe there's a vacuum hose on both of them as well. Disconnect those. It does help to actually remove that whole idle air control pipe, so then you can get access to your wiring harness and kind of pull that out the way. You do have a ground here and here for your wiring harness, as well as 6 coil packs and 6 injectors. This style pick from Harbor Freight or really wherever is going to be your best friend for removing these connector clips on these square style plugs. To do this, you're just going to poke the tool in it to where you can get a good bite, and once you get it through, you're going to push it and feed it to where you just pull it back and it snaps out. And it's as easy as that to actually disconnect that. If they've never been removed, those clips are going to be super tight. So just keep at it and keep a magnet down there so you can catch it, especially if you're reusing it. I always recommend upgrading your injectors while you're in here, but that's already been done on this car. You're going to have your VTC and your O2 connector over here on the side, and your O2 and VTC are actually here above your idle air control. So since I have the engine out of the car, this is going to help you guys see it much better. But your auxiliary air is right here. Your knock sensor should be mounted right here. I'm actually unaware if that's even at. Are we missing a knock sensor? That would explain probably why the transmission wouldn't shift all the way through. Well, that's frustrating, especially for the owner and the previous owner at that. Your yellow idle air control connector is here, and your fast idle control is down here. So you'll use that same magnet and pick method to remove those. And you've got a clip here on your hard idle switch, and then your oval TPS connector. You'll disconnect this brake booster hose and all associated vacuum lines connected to the plenum. Obviously your balance tube and throttle cover, and you'll need 14 mils to remove your 2 cables here. Fuel rail has 3 bolts, 2 bolts for your fuel pressure regulator and 2 for your dampener. And especially if you have old hoses while you're in here, just cut them all and disconnect them and replace them, please. Do not let your Z burn to the ground because of a $20 negligence. Seriously, just do it while you're in there. Now we're down to where we're at. It does appear our PCV is already disconnected. It's actually not even present, so that's strange. But you will disconnect that PCV the same way that you'll disconnect this one. And now we need to remove these brackets with 4 12 mils. Technically it's only 2 bolts, you only need to do the top, but since it's an NA, it doesn't hurt to at least loosen the bottom so they kind of swing out the way and you get a little more room here. I just say pull it off because we're going to delete that junk. And once we have them off, we have full access to our EGR pipes and the 2 10 mil bolts. And these are one of the most annoying things about the Z. Thankfully, we're deleting that too. Now that the EGR is disconnected, it's officially time for us to unbolt the plenum. So you're going to have 8 12 mil bolts here. Yes, this is a bolt. Oh, forgot, we got to remove all 6 of our coil packs, except I only got 2 left in place. Once they're all cracked loose, you can start prying up on the plenum. And really your biggest issue is going to be the coolant lines underneath the plenum if they haven't already been dealt with. My recommendation, do the coolant line bypass while you're in here. Delete them suckers, but it's actually already been deleted on this car. Check out one of my old videos if you need to know how to do it, but we're not going over that this video. And if you are going to do the bypass, just cut them hoses if they're getting hung up on you, because there's no reason in keeping them. While we're here, we're just going to grab some rags or at least a towel to lay over our intake so we don't have anything fall in, especially anything non-magnetic, because then you're in for a treat. We're actually going to probably be replacing these lower injector seals while we're at it. Since we just ordered a bag of them, I highly recommend it while you're in here. The same with obviously servicing your injectors. So we're going to remove all 4 of these 12 mils from the spark plug tube ornament cover so we can pull that out. And it really doesn't hurt to change your spark plugs while you're in here. We're obviously going to check the condition and do so as needed. You've got to pull these guides to actually pull your valve covers. Now we did just pull both of our heater core pipes back here so we could loosen these EGR arms. Now we're just going to take a 10 mil, remove all 8 of these exhaust valve cover bolts, and you'll also have a hose clamp over here to separate from the PCV. So I'm actually going to remove that all in its own because it's just going to be easier, and I'm resealing these pipes anyways. If this is in the car, that's not really going to be practical for you. You may need to replace this with the silicone hose so there's actually enough flex and whatnot to be able to put this back on. What in the world is going on down here? Why is the rear main just leaking all of a sudden? I think there was so much oil in the EGR valve that when we unbolted it, it's just leaking everywhere. Put that in the trash. You'll have another little bracket down here for your oil dipstick. I do like to pull the exhaust before the intake, mainly so the intake's nice and secure. And with my claw hammer's persuasion, we can crack that loose. Once we get the valve cover to separate from the head, we'll need to swing that bracket out the way because it'll keep it on. Now's the chore of prying it off on this elbow. Oh, so close. There we go. Well, it's got oil. Definitely smells a little fuely, so we're probably gonna have to pull those injectors out the rail and check them out. Now let's grab a Phillips and remove each of these. Impact driver helps the absolute most here. I'll just peel up on this PCV elbow or this hose over here, and it'll pull that off. Leaving that old gasket in will actually keep the mating surface, or at least the bottom side of the actual intake valve cover, all clean, so that way you don't have to wipe it up when you go to put it back. Now that we're in here, you're going to want to pull both of these VTC solenoids and clean them up so you can put fresh RTV on them, and the transformation on that's going to be amazing. Note to you guys, the short line goes over here on the driver's side. The long one goes on the passenger. So we're only going to show you this side because this side over here is going to be exactly the same, but it's actually going to be easier because you don't have this elbow here or this dipstick thing that could get in the way. So here we're going to start with the intake side, and we're going to get this VTC spot all cleaned up. Usually just using your fingernail to scrape all the old RTV off is plenty. If not, just grab a brass brush and make sure not to drop anything down in here. And since this one takes a gasket, we're actually just going to clean up the surface. Pretty simple. We're just going to get everything all nice and clean. And before we're officially ready, we're going to put some brake cleaner on this rag and really get it super clean. There's actually supposed to be a little bit of RTV in these corners, so you'll probably have to clean up some there as well. So let's clean that up. So we've got it all cleaned up. We wiped it up all with a brake cleaner and a rag so we could get all the oil residue off, so we got a good nice seat between the two. We also took this VTC solenoid and cleaned it all up. Now before we reinstall that, we're going to need to grab some ultra gray RTV, so that way we can actually put a dab here in this corner, just because it's kind of that valley or that elbow at the gasket, just to help it seal. And then we're going to put a bead down here, except we're going to put it down here on this actual VTC solenoid. Ultra gray is usually the way to go. However, I have actual Nissan RTV or liquid gasket, so this is pretty much like the right stuff, and this cures in 2 hours. And I did totally forget to mention that we actually kind of resprayed over this to bring it back from looking like this, so it's going to look way better. Start to lay bead. This is only going to go on like 80% of the VTC solenoid. Not 80%, 50. Sorry, I meant to say 180 degrees. I like to leave a little bit to squish so we can be sure to get a nice seal in here. We're going to pretty much put one bolt through, and we're going to drop this little solenoid piece in the back of the cam to get it aligned. And as we drop it down, we're actually going to thread our bolts in to get it aligned while holding the VTC still. Just hand tighten it down, and then we're gonna leave it to sit here for, what, maybe 10 minutes before we tighten it down. What you wanna look for is make sure you got enough squish inside there on the inside and down along the back, so you know for sure that you're actually filling all the gaps right there. Now what I also like to do with this little bit of excess is I'll just kind of smush it across, and we'll do kind of the same thing here with the rest of that RTV, like what we're going to do up here in these corners. This is why I prefer using this Nissan stuff, because you can just literally get it in there just like this. You don't need anything on the top. Your seal should do that just fine. We're going to take that new gasket and just kind of stick it into place. Make sure you get the right side, as they are side specific. I always like to go back with a little bit of brake cleaner just to make sure that that seal is as clean as it can be. Just drop it straight down, looking at these screw holes, and kind of wiggle it into place. A little tip when we go to install the exhaust valve cover, it's going to help to remove this PCV hose so we actually get room to, sit it on. Now we can take all of our hardware and begin to secure it. So the torque spec here is like 1.7 foot-pounds or something, but all I do is I start here in the center, spiral my way out until it's literally just snug. Now after you get this tightened down, when the piece round, you'll actually come back and it won't be tight again, so you want to snug it back down. If you got Z-spec hardware, you don't want to go that tight because it's not shouldered and it can actually break your valve cover. Two clicks is my torque spec. And to intake valve cover, it was officially on, coated, and all done. Now it's time that we can move down here to our exhaust. Yay, the fun one to clean. Let's pop our half moon out the back. And now that it's been 10 minutes, we're just gonna hand tighten these, snug them up. Torque spec I think is like 5 foot-pounds. When it comes to cleaning up all this crud, my preference is a razor blade and a brass brush. So we're just gonna go through on this bottom side, just kind of knock everything down. Get it as clean as we can without gouging the surface and just kind of being careful at the same time. Especially all those like oil stain parts from the inside where the oil kind of pools up and sits. Now once you get that all knocked down, I prefer to use my thumbnail right here to clean out the half moon seal, mainly so you got control to not drop it down in there. And we're pretty much just going to clean it the rest of the way up until it's nice and just shiny aluminum. I guess you can't really tell on the GoPro from that angle. Super crusty, super nice and shiny. So that's the goal, to pretty much do that to this whole thing. When I do it down here on the sides, I kind of scrape downwards so none of it kind of goes up in the head. If it does, I kind of clean it out, my finger or a rag accordingly. Sometimes you can get a perfect straight side to side to be able to clean that up. When it comes to the top side, I like to take my thumbnail and clean off all the spot in the middle from the groove of the valve cover. Knock that down, so that way I have control not to drop it down in the engine. You won't need a razor blade up here if you do that, but it doesn't hurt to, run it up here before you hit it with the brush. So we take a nice new microfiber towel or anything that doesn't really shred that much. I kind of like these slightly used, so that way they're kind of greased up and nothing falls off. And as I tuck these down in this corner, it'll catch the debris and I clean the top up. And if there's any hard spots left, I can just go back with my thumbnail and knock it off. Especially if it's old RTV, it's not going to be that like stuck on here. Gotta keep your finger down or it'll just rip that rag right up. And like a magician, so that way you pull it all back and none of it gets on. And then we move it to this half and do the exact same thing. So let's finish this up and then we'll move on to cleaning our valve covers. So now we're going to use a couple different tools to clean out the inside of this valve cover. And what I like to use is like an L-shaped pick a razor, and a steel brush. So basically what the razor is going to do is you can use it to knock down anything that's primarily there, although you're not going to have a whole lot of that because it's all going to be down in this groove. You can also use like a wire wheel to clean this part out here. Helps a lot more than like using a brush or a razor. Pretty much the brush is going to get all of the stuff on the flat surface and remove that. But we'll come back and do that last. That cleaned up really nice. What we're going to do with the pick is we're going to run it down each side of this groove so we can scrape out that RTV. We just did one side, we'll do the other, and it should come right out. You don't got to be too crazy about how much you clean out, as long as you get the majority and you don't leave a bunch of like thick old buildup in there. Oh, it's in my hand. Gee whiz, I was looking for it that whole time and it was in my hand. Well, we'll just take that wire brush and give it that last final clean. So I don't really worry about getting debris inside the valve cover here because we can come back and rinse it out. So now that that's out, we'll just grab a can of brake cleaner and we're going to spray in the groove to get all the oil out, make it as clean as possible so the next RTV bead will stick the best as possible. So let's clean this the rest of the way up. We're also going to wire brush this down and clean up the outside so it's more presentable and it's going to look better on the engine. So now we've got it all cleaned up, spit shine you could say, and we've got this pretty much free of debris and nothing has collected in here. We made sure to shake it out and make sure nothing like fell down into the baffling. So now we're going to take some brake cleaner on a rag. Let's give it one final wipe down. Ignore the dirty workbench, but we're just going to sit this up where it sits nicely and it's not going to fall over on us. And this is why I like using the caulk gun, because it'll save your hand from squeezing that little RTV bottle. I think you can be a little more consistent with the caulk gun too. So now we're just going to lay like a 4mm bead along this groove. Smushing it every once in a while helps too, because it kind of forces it all down in that groove. And with the caulk gun, you don't have to use your finger and get all messy. You can just smear it with the tip. Oh, it's so hot out here. My hand's all sticky. I can't do this how I want. Smoothly, I should say. Let's get this thing finished up so we can install it, since this has a much faster cure time. All beaded up and ready to install. Except we have one thing to do before that, and that is to install our half moon seal. When it comes to installing your half moon, I always spray this with brake cleaner on the top and the grooves and wipe it out. Basically, you want to clean this just like the surface of everything else, because this could be kind of oiled from the factory to help it come out of the mold. So you always just want to make sure this thing is super clean, because a lot of times it leaks from these points, especially after they've been replaced, and it's easy just to handle it from the outsides once it is all clean. So we did already clean up this head surface, but I'm actually going to do it just one more time because you really can't be too cautious here. Anytime you work inside your engine, look at it like you're doing surgery, and you want to be as clean as possible. A little bit of dirt. So now we're just going to put a fat bead around our half moon seal, and I always do a fat bead here so I get a good squish on it. So basically I'll just dang near fill up this whole gap with RTV, because it's not like this is going to squish and fall out. Pretty much what I'm relying on it to do is to squish all around and get a full contact surface so we don't have any issues of leaks. So the lesson to be learned here is to always check your fitment before you install, because stuff happens, I guess. Now we'll push the half moon in. Make sure it gets a good squish. When it does, I kind of like to wipe these corners down. Honestly, I'll just smear it on top of the seal so I know that there's a good, like, thin RTV layer on it before it all squishes down. So now we're going to grab the valve cover, and I really just like to put like 1 or 2 bolts in it. I'm going to put one probably in each center, catty corner to each other. So we got one down here and one up here. So as we set this on, we can look at the bolt holes to see where to place it. And once you get it almost stuck, thread your bolts in to center it. I'll just tighten this bolt down about hand tight till I can see the RTV squish a little bit on the back side. And the same thing down here. Take your time, don't rush this, just make sure you get it on your first try, because you really don't want to take all this off and have to do any of it again. So now we'll grab the other 8 bolts and we'll do the same thing, and we'll just hand tight them all down to squish the RTV. Just hand tight, and instead of waiting an hour like Ultra Gray before you tighten it down to spec, we're only going to wait 10 minutes because the stuff cures like in 2 hours. So the tightening sequence, I believe, is actually you start in the middle and do kind of like a spiral, rotate your way around. Now we gotta wait 10 minutes and we can tighten it down. I believe it's like 4.7 to 5.3 foot-pounds. It's so insignificant, I don't use a torque wrench. I literally just hand tighten it and snug it. Now that our 10 minutes is up, just gonna go through, snug it all down. Just get it almost tight the first try, and then we'll go back and actually tighten it down second time. Now for the final hurrah. You really shouldn't have to go back and retorque after you do it this way, especially with the RTV. It pretty much just glues it down, but never hurts to, you know, double check and just do it one more time. Awesome. Valve cover's on. Now there's one thing I do kind of like to do before I actually start putting everything back, and that is I'll go down here to all this like squish out on the side, and I'll smear it. Mainly so you don't just have this big, nasty, thick bead sticking out. Kind of make it look a little bit better. Now we're going to put our spark plug guides in. Make sure you replace them tube seals on the end. Make sure you get a nice even seat before you go bolting it down. And probably like most other 12 mil bolts here on the engine, these are probably like 12 foot-pounds. Now we have officially replaced both of our valve covers. Pretty much all of them. You guys get the gist. Now I'm going to say this again in case you guys didn't listen to me. If you haven't already, it's a great time during this process to go ahead and replace your fuel line here, as well as the rest of it here up in the engine bay, especially what comes on top from the fuel filter. Replace your fuel filter as well. It's not going to hurt, especially if you have no record of it being done. Replace these injector seals on the bottom. If you have old original injectors, it never hurts to pull them out, make sure they're all right. And replace the O-rings. Not a must, but it helps. Helps to replace your PCV and idle hoses with silicone ones so they install much easier. Now if you pull the engine out like me, do the rear main. We've got an oil tree gasket over here, an EGR delete, so we get full access to this. We've got brand new O2 sensors down here, as well as some motor mounts to replace these old floppy crusty ones. We're going to use that RTV with these 2 oil pan seals. The knock sensor, because if you have the transmission off or the engine out, it's going to be way easier to replace this, if not impossible, unless you take the lower timing, not the lower timing, but technically you do, but the lower intake off and the timing components. And last but not least, balance tube O-rings. These are always flattened out, and odds are you probably lost one when you pulled that balance tube anyways, so just buy these. Hit up Concept Z Performance for any of your parts needs. They are the best, and that is where I buy all of my parts from. We obviously still got some to do over here on this side, but I've got it all cleaned up. I just have to clean the valve cover, and thankfully this is the short side, so we don't have a whole lot left to do. And if I helped you guys out, don't forget to drop a like on the video or comment and let me know that I did. Since it's another 95-degree day in my sweltering garage with all of my vents open and I'm still dying, we're going to call it quits. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe down below, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.